because every day that I didn't do it, I was like, oh, I need to
Oh
do this
yeah.
thing all day. I'd be like, oh, I don't want to do the thing. And so I'm going to do anything to not think about the thing. But so all day, every day, I'm doing anything to not think about the thing, which means I'm thinking about the thing
All day.
all day. And I'm
So it's
telling you, it is so
ruining
freeing.
any conversations. It's
Yes.
overwhelming your time. You're not ever fully present with anybody else in the room, like because you're constantly worried. Like, guys,
Yes.
as a recovering avoidant adventurer myself, like I can speak to how empowering it is to know that the choices that you're making are from a space of knowledge and trust that are founded
Mhm.
in what it is that you want. Hello and welcome to the Studio Takeover podcast. I'm your host, Kat Ford Coates. Today, I am joined by Bex Wood. She's out of Woodlands in Texas. Anytime I speak with a photographer out of Texas specifically, I'm always like, is that Texas stereotype really a thing of like bigger, better, stronger, America number one? Or is it really, just connecting with more people in the photo community? And I think that's one of the main reasons that I love talking with you, Bex, is because you are open and charismatic and super fun and, like all of the hype, kind of the way people look at the South, right? I live in North Carolina. So people are like, oh, the South. So it's nothing but racism and misogyny. Awesome. And people associate with Texas, and you just aren't in any of that.
You
So
know,
welcome.
thank you, thank you. It's interesting that you say that because I grew up in small town Louisiana, in southern Louisiana, which I didn't realize it because when you're growing up, just things are happening and it's all normal. But even more of a problem, I think, with just racism being around, I didn't even realize it, but it is definitely like I never felt that it was that prevalent, but now looking back, I'm like, wow, okay, it definitely
Mhm.
was. And you have that in Texas too. Definitely things are bigger in Texas. I mean, just Texas is just so big in size, period. But it even like it goes down to like when I'm doing hair and makeup in the studio, and we have like a makeup artist. And what I love is that people will ask for a natural look. And we'll have to say, like, okay, do you mean New York natural or Texas natural? Because what they really want are giant lashes, smoky eye, full face. That's what they want for their natural look. Yeah, it's fun. It's what you make of it. So
Sure, sure. Well, one of my makeup artists is actually, she's from Dallas, so she's always just like the bigger the hair, the closer to God, it's
uh-huh.
kind of her mantra. And I'm like, yes, yes. It's so funny to me how like we make assumptions about people. And I thought it would be really great to talk about how those assumptions, that's all they are assumptions. And as business owners, those stereotypes just simply aren't true to the core. There might be some circumstances where those things are true, but really like just seeing your growth over the last year since I met you, right, has been like, oh,
Yeah.
what's happening in Bex's world? Okay. And so like knowing that the assumption of, well, she's in Texas, so things must be different, it's just not true. And seeing you kind of take the reins, both creatively in your business and what it is that you want to create and how you're executing. I'm curious how that correlates, that creative growth correlates to how you're showing up for and in the business that you've created because of your love for that process.
I think Texas is still the South in general, is still a great place for creativity. And I think it's wherever you want it. Like if I were in Alaska, have we met someone that's in portrait system from Alaska? Because I don't recall one. I would love to meet that person. But I feel like even if you were in Alaska and it's hard to go outside, like what, 300 days out of the year, I don't know. But I feel like you could still, make that your special creative corner.
Oh, absolutely. Wayne Dyer, when I very, very, very first opened in 2012, I discovered like Wayne Dyer and Tony Robbins. Where I'd been living under a rock prior to that, I don't know, but that's when I, really discovered their work. But one of the
Yeah.
things that Wayne Dyer said over and over again is, everything is a mirror, right?
Mm,
Everything is a mirror to you. So whether you're in Texas or North Carolina or Alaska or Louisiana or New York City or Washington State, you will find what you are bringing to the table.
mm,
Right. So if you're not happy where you are, it's probably not because of the location and more because of you are not happy with who you are.
yeah.
So I always equate growth, especially to that internal growth that we do, whether it's through a healing process or discovery or creativity, to getting to know yourself more in a wholehearted way, unfolding things within you that maybe you just simply weren't aware of yet.
Yes, totally agree with that. And that whole mirror, because for me, like, it hasn't for me. It hasn't. I mean, I guess there's a creative journey, but that's not been my main journey. My main journey has been finding myself. And I feel like I really didn't start to do that until 2020. That's when I decided that I was actually going to start my business. I had
Okay.
officially started in 2019. Like that was when I first started on the journey of finding what do I want to do with myself. I probably started that journey in 2019 when I first started like looking inward and deciding, who am I? And I couldn't answer that question because everything I was doing at that time was not what I wanted to be and not what I wanted to do. And I felt extremely unfulfilled. And so was searching for something to find, really I was looking for what is the meaning of life? Where do I fit in life? And who am I? And I couldn't answer those questions. And I still can't, but I definitely have more direction. I think when we first met, and I'm pretty sure that's when I started my first campaign, was off of the backbone of that work.
Mm-hmm.
And I started my first campaign. I couldn't decide. It took me like a year, I think, to even figure out what I wanted my campaign to be about because I didn't want it to be something I had already seen. I wanted it to be different and something special from my heart. And it took a long time to figure that out. But then I realized that we tend to teach what we need to learn the most. And so
Mm-hmm.
I started with my clients teaching them about self-confidence and how I notice when people are feeling more confident, they show up better on camera. And I noticed too that if any little thing broke that confidence, if for some reason maybe I was a little critical or something in talking about their makeup, who knows, or I noticed little things that would break down their confidence and then would totally kill the vibe until I could like recover it in our session.
Mm-hmm.
And so I focus a lot on self-confidence. And that's what I built my whole first campaign around, was about self-confidence. And I had people choose like the power word that we made the whole photo shoot all about, a power word for them that meant confidence. And they couldn't use the word confident. And like, I got like badass, I got strong, feminine strength, all kinds of fun stuff. It was just really fun to explore those with other people. And it also helped me to sort of reflect and do that inner work also. And so this year I've started another, I called it Moxie Project before. So now this is Moxie Project season 2. Last year was all about confidence. This year we're talking about authenticity. So I feel like, to me, like the first level is confidence. Well, once you're confident, you've got to be who you really are. And you have to, I think, even dig deeper to be confident to be who you are instead of
Mm.
just confident in general.
There's a difference between competence
Mm-hmm.
and confidence,
Yeah.
right? And they can be one after the other. But I think if you look at children, right? Children are innately confident,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Yeah.
they may not be competent with skill sets, but they are confident because they are worthy, and they are worthy because they exist. And we lose that along the way, where
Mm-hmm.
we learn different things as children and as young adults and even into adulthood, that we base all of our core beliefs and how we make choices moving forward in the world on those lessons we learned at 7 years old, 12 years old. Those things that we took on as truth now become how we live our lives, and we don't even realize that we're doing it as adults because now we're grown-ups and that's just what we've always done and it's worked for us and rah, 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 rah.
Yeah.
And when you uncover that, right, and I think that's really what you're doing is uncovering this story for these women, because it's not only confidence,
Mm.
it's like to be sincere and show up as who you are. Like that takes a level of trust and faith that many of us don't even realize we need or that we're lacking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't even realize that we're lacking it, like for sure. And I think too, it's like sometimes this was how it was for me. Like I think I just like for the longest time, I just went and went and went, didn't ever stop to listen to me. And I think part of it was too, because whenever I would stop and listen to like my, what am I saying? What's going on in here? Instead of just reacting and going and doing,
Mm-hmm.
stopping and listening. And I had a really hard time with just being quiet because I think my inner voice was extremely critical, extremely negative.
Oh.
So anytime I started to sort of figure out, well, who am I would just start to have all of this negativity and self-doubt and lose my confidence. So just like, oh, okay, I'm going to ignore that and keep doing this thing that, I know it's not me, but it's at least, it's what people are accepting. Right. And so I just kind of stayed that way for the longest time. Now I can finally like listen to myself and I'm able to cut that negative noise. I hear my negative voice saying like, oh, that you look stupid. You're not attractive. This is bad lighting. All the things that would make me stop and not be myself. And now I'm a lot more comfortable with myself because I hear the negative noise and I ignore it. Who cares if I don't look at my absolute best? I'm still me and I'm still worthy of talking and being heard. Like, and that's where I'm at. But in the past, it's like, oh, if any little thing where I felt that I wasn't perfect, I would just stop and then be this perfect thing that I knew that was,
Mm. When authenticity becomes the name of the game, it's about appreciating who you are in a moment. And that comes with both imperfections
mhm.
and everything, like the things you think you're terrific at. But nobody's perfect.
Yeah,
And we
nobody.
get so caught up in the perfection or the assumed standard that we're bearing this weight of like, but it's
Mhm.
not perfect, it's not perfect, and I run into that a lot with my students. Well, I can't put it out, it's not perfect. I can't do this thing because it's not perfect. I want it to be perfect. Guys, perfectionism doesn't exist.
Yeah.
It does not exist.
Even
And
if you thought it was perfect in that moment and waited till it was perfect and then posted it in a month, in a year, certainly you're going to look back and be like, oh, I can't believe I ever posted that. Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
not really, but you know what I mean?
right.
I can't believe I thought that was perfect.
Well,
It's
because you know what you know,
yeah,
right? And it's kind of like with retouching, right? When you start learning how to use Photoshop, your eyes are not trained to see those fine details yet.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
and that's why, like, the first stuff that when we start learning how to retouch skin, right, it comes out looking like plastic,
Yeah,
right? And I remember seeing those and being like, whoa. Because at the time I
yeah,
was like, I did it. I
yeah.
got through it. I got it done. That's great. And I look at it and I'm like, oh my God, you sent that to someone, right? But this it's true for all areas, right? Whether we're talking about being a human or an artist or a business, it's, like that perfection isn't attainable.
It doesn't exist. And I think it's healthy to chase it, but to wait for it or to hold yourself back until you have it, like that's a bad idea because it won't happen.
Well, and you can allow things to come to you and put the pieces in place so that if and when it does arrive, right? Like you can actually take advantage of that space, right? And contribute your resources in exchange for the thing. It starts with you, like you were saying, like doing that inner work to not continuously, repeat the cycle again and again. And it's not like the cycle never shows up again. It's not like you graduate. It's now you have the awareness to see when things are occurring or when you're repeating patterns so that you can stop it sooner and make a different choice.
Yeah.
So what are you finding is the biggest benefit for your audience in these sessions? Like the Moxie Project went really well. You're doing a season 2. Like what does that look like in your business?
I feel like so many people I have found really want to get more in touch with their authentic self. I think that photography is a great tool to help them get that much more connected. I know in my own session, like having my own portraits taken was a huge step for me in like actually
Mm-hmm.
seeing myself and accepting myself and loving myself. And it was also a huge eye opener in that I was not there yet, because I thought I was there. I thought, oh, I love myself. I practice self-care. Of course I'm wonderful, right? Like
I've got it on lock. Yeah.
on the surface, I was, I was doing all the right things, but on the inside, when I went to look at those pictures later, it was just too close to
Mm.
me. And I was uncomfortable with it. And I think it was because I was still not being my true self. And I think what I could see was this fake facade that I put up. And I was disappointed in that in myself, because why wasn't I had everything set up for me to authentically show up. And I was still holding myself back, but I was lying to myself, because if you would have asked me that day and even the next day, oh yeah, I showed up, I bared it all, and it was really raw and wonderful. And then it was all of those things. But what I didn't like was that it showed me that I was not as far on my journey as I thought I was. Like I thought I was. And this is all only in here.
Mm-hmm.
Like that no one else can see this part of my journey. And I think anyone else outside looking in would tell me that these are amazing and you look great. And so stop giving yourself a hard time. I don't know. I'm still struggling with that. I've had to literally bring my portraits to therapy and look at them. And my therapist say, like, what do you see? And I only could see my flaws. Like,
Right.
oh, I could only see my flaws. Then now I can look at them, and I'm in love with them. And it's a milestone in my journey. I think though I thought I had made it. I think I thought I was there. I was fully authentic with myself. That's how I really thought. And I wasn't. And so I think with my clients, kind of helping them also on that journey, and showing them a side of themselves that they didn't know that they could see.
Here's the thing, because I remember, like photograph, and that was actually in this room, right?
Yeah.
Uh, Photographing you here, and I remember like you kind of shifting between outfit to outfit, and there was a genuine excitement, but it was also, I think, you had projected onto yourself that this was the moment where you claim who you are. I even remember thinking like, there's something she's not saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And I didn't know
Yeah.
if that was like something you didn't want to say to yourself or something you didn't want to share with me. Because we had a ball,
Yeah,
right?
I
And,
know. It was a
like we went through
blast.
the whole thing, but
Yeah.
that's the power of photography, right? There is
Yeah.
something in those images that you see that nobody else can see,
Yeah.
that you aren't saying.
Well, and I think part of it too was I didn't know what to say. I didn't know who I was, and I didn't know who I wanted to be. I had some ideas and I thought I knew. Part of the reason why I wanted to have portraits like what we did was because I really thought I wanted to go more into portrait photography. And I think that experience too helped me to real because I kept pushing portraits even with my clients, like, let's have a portrait, let's make something fun for the wall. And I think it's just not quite my thing. I think it's not my thing. I'm not quite in tune to that. And I really enjoy personal branding. Like I enjoy
Oh,
still portraiture, but through a personal branding lens. And that doesn't have to be about business, but I enjoy that periphery of a story, that kind of storytelling. Maybe it's just because I do well with instructions, but I get from my clients like their blueprint of what they want to say, and then I help them to tell that story, and that I've really started to enjoy that process where I'm taking what is, I guess, could be in all aspects a business kind of a photo shoot, but turning it into something much deeper and personal.
when I talk with clients, one of the things that I always ask is, what imagery do you have or desire to have that tells the story of who you were? And I always frame it in the past tense because that causes people to consider mortality and consider the story that people will tell. And
Yeah.
your photography is what allows that story to be told. So whether you're framing it for branding, right? But I mean, I believe that's what portraiture is. It's
Hmm.
that library of imagery that you have that notes times in your life, who you were at that time. And, you know, when you look back on a library of work or an album or, insert photography vehicle here. It's who were you at that time And right, like if you're focusing now on like the authentic side,
Mhm.
what does that say? Right? What story unfolds there? What do you see looking back on it that you didn't see in the moment? Like you were saying about your session, right? Like
Mhm.
I really
Mhm.
felt like I was showing up and I had a great time and I was doing the thing. And then now I'm taking them to therapy. Like, right. But it is therapy. It is because photography, because there's tangible evidence now that that version of you exists.
Yeah.
What is that version of you saying to you? It doesn't even have to be to the rest of the world.
And I feel like what it says to me also changes over time. Like, but because, like, for example, looking at those portraits even just 6 months ago compared to today, I feel differently about them. I think in many ways, although not recognizable ones physically, but in many ways, I'm a perfectionist. I think that having those portraits, and honestly, I think I want to do it again and to see how am I showing up differently, and to visually compare what I see behind my eyes now or in another shoot compared to what I saw, what I'm sending, what I'm projecting or sending out now versus what I was sending out before, because I feel like it's night and day different. And I think also having them has really helped the forgiveness process for myself. And I think that I struggle with forgiving myself for not being perfect um, all the time. In fact, I'm probably always upset with myself that I'm not reaching 100% in all aspects. And pick a category, and I'm
Wow.
upset that I'm not, you know, my 100%. And I think, like you were saying, I felt that I showed up 100%, and I think that everyone that day showed up 100%. I don't think anyone was lacking. I think the lacking part was in my own perception of myself and my own ability to feel that I'm truly authentic with myself. And I guess the more deeper I dive into my own authenticity and finding who I am, why do I want to be that way, and leaning into that, the more I realize how inauthentic I was before when I thought I was authentic.
Ooh.
And I guess there's just levels that you don't recognize until you
Mhm.
get down there.
This is the part that always blows me away because like the imposter syndrome and the fake it till you make it and position yourself at the 7-figure version of you. What do they know? Right? Like whatever it is that you're striving for. And you make those decisions and you feel like really solid. You're like, yes, this is what I would do. This version of me would do. And yeah, like I'm going all in, right? And then you get there and you go through the things and you have like the experience you anticipated having, but then the byproduct of that experience occurs and you're like, that's all me showing up for myself, but not at not at the level that the version of me I'd hoped would show up. I should be farther along and I'm mad that I'm not, and I should, and should doesn't exist.
Mm.
Should does not exist. But we beat ourselves up constant about
Yeah.
how we should be making more money. We should be in great intimate relationships with our partners. We should be making work that we're really proud of. We should have multiple clients that are just beating down our doors to come and work with us. Insert reason here. I should be farther along. Then that just the byproducts of that self judgment turns into just beating yourself up like you were talking about again and again. Like I'm constantly unhappy with where I am in any category, right? Because I should be, instead of, oh my God, I'm really proud of how far I have come, because 2012 version of Kat and 2024 version of Kat, she would just be looking at me and being like, you are doing the damn thing. And 2024 me is like, why isn't it more? Right? Like TikTok. And you're like, you're TikToking yourself. All that does is take you out of the moment and puts you in a place where you can appreciate where you are. So when you're not present, you're either living in the past or living in the future, and neither one of those things are here anymore. And so you're depriving yourself of your fucking life because of something that you expected and didn't receive on a timeline that you put in place, and playing chess with the fucking universe.
You know, I think room to grow, though, that's a great
Ooh.
thing,
Yeah.
having room to grow. I feel like we should always have room to grow. And if you feel that you're in a spot where you don't have room to grow, you should reevaluate where you're sitting. it's kind of like the horizon. Like if you're on a boat, it's always out there. You're never
Uh-huh.
going to make it there. But if you don't keep your eyes on the horizon, you're never going to go in the right direction. You'll just be meandering
Oh,
around, but you're
right.
never going to get to the horizon. You're never going to make it there. You just have to keep your sights set on it. So like if you think about, for me, this helped me with
That's
perfection,
huge.
because for me, perfection is on the horizon, and it's okay to chase perfection, but to understand that you will never achieve it. And if you achieve it, something's wrong. You're at the bottom of the ocean or something somewhere. I don't know. Like you shouldn't achieve it. So if you think you're there, you're in a bad spot.
I really like that analogy a lot, actually, Bex. That's
Yeah.
awesome. So, Bex, you're bringing this, Moxie Project season 2, the authenticity campaign. How are these ladies showing up? Well, I'm assuming they're ladies and they may not be. Like, how are your clients showing up for that
Yeah.
experience with you?
They were ladies all last year. And this year I decided, why don't I work with men? I also realized, I think I thought that, oh, men don't want to spend the money on photography. And it's not true. Because there are plenty of men out there that, just like women, love having their photo taken, value it, and are happy to pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I enjoy working with men. I enjoy creating that kind of a GQ spread looking kind of a thing.
Sure.
Um, how are my clients showing up? You know, it's interesting. I'm still figuring all of that out. And I feel, because it's just new data every time with each
Right.
person. Often when I first meet them for our consultation, they're self-conscious.
Mm-hmm.
They can't describe themselves, especially business owners. And I'll ask them, like, how would you describe your professional self, only using 3 words? And let's just start with one. Just give me one. But often they can't even come up with one. Or they'll say things like confident, trustworthy, with integrity, confident, trustworthy, and authentic. Those are my 3 where I'm like, if I'm not photographing you looking authentic, trustworthy, and confident, then I'm not doing my job. Unless maybe you're a character actor and you want to look, sketchy and
Right, right,
untrustworthy.
right.
But in general, especially for branding, that's a given: confident, trustworthy, authentic. So,
And
but how,
approachable. And yeah.
yeah, well, approachability, I think, depends on their profession. So it's like, are they the kind of person who needs to collaborate? Then approachable is great. But are they person is it a lawyer that's in trial
Right.
and they don't want to look approachable? They want to look
No, they want
tough
to
and like
be
you're not going to get
aggressive.
one.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And so, but what I've noticed, especially with small business owners, even some that have been in business for 10 years, cannot describe themselves with only a few words. They really struggle with that. And so to me, it's like, that's a great opportunity to tell them, if you're having trouble with this, you need to just sit with yourself and figure out who you are, because, or at least go through, hire a marketing expert that can help you with your whole branding process. Because that's not something that I do, but I can take that information to make a beautiful branding shoot. And so if they haven't done that, they didn't have more work to do. But okay, sorry, and I got off topic, but if we're focusing on my clients for Moxie Project, how are they showing up? They're insecure, they're self-conscious on our Zoom. They also struggle to pick like what is the word that they want to embody. Not all of them, but it's often a kind of a journey that we kind of go through together. Like I feel like I'm also finding my own authentic self as I work with them to help find their own authenticity. I help them, think about, often I'll have them think about like sometimes we go back to childhood. Like, when is the first time that you truly remember feeling very happy? The first time was the earliest memory that you have of happiness. And I'll have them to start to tell me like that. Hearing things about that helps me to understand what drives them, what makes them tick, what helps them to feel confident. So we go back to their earlier years, and I can deduce, I guess, from what they're telling me, the things that make them feel more confident, the things that help them to feel more at ease, and things that I know in the back of my mind that could help make their photo shoot be that much better for them. So like you can just tell by some people's personality, some people need a lot more positive feedback. Some people, positive feedback makes them very uncomfortable and even more self-conscious. And so it's just kind of figuring out what is the dance to do that I'm also not uncomfortable, but helping to them feel comfortable
Hold
just
that
in the
space.
space, just in the space. And then, because then, when you pick up the camera, it just like, oh, okay, now I have, it's so funny because people who know how to be human, right? You know how to be, you know how to sit and feel comfortable. And then like you pick up the camera, like, okay. And they're just like, oh, I don't know how to sit. Like, okay, just relax and just, just start sitting. Let's just start there. And then I'll guide you and pose you. And I help put them into, the poses. And then once we perfect that pose, and then I have them to start thinking thoughts in their head. Because I feel like so often what happens is like, even if I pose them perfectly, it's just kind of blank here, if
Well, they're still listening,
they're
right?
still
They're still
listening.
listen. So their eyebrows are up
Yes.
and they're leaned in and they're
Yes.
doing what you told them to
Yeah.
do, but they forgot about their face, right? And so they're
Yes.
still waiting for that next direction, which
Yeah.
is why like continuously talking to them is helpful and be like, okay, relax your
Yeah.
forehead. I
Yeah.
was actually thinking about what you said when people don't know how to answer, who are you?
Mm-hmm.
And the way we've always done that, because I would run into that too. They're like, oh, I don't know. Like, I just thought I wanted a headshot for LinkedIn. And it's who are you in your business?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, we all, especially solopreneurs, are wearing so many hats, right? I'm the marketing director. I am the networker. I am the social media advisor. I am the technician. I am the SEO expert, like all of the things, right? And when you rephrase it to ask them about who they are in their business, right? That's different than who are you as a person, right? Because
Mm-hmm. It
how they
is.
have to show up as a leader helps to remind them that their business is separate from who they are as a person, but how they have to show up in that business to be effective in the roles that they're playing. They do know what that is.
Well, they should, right?
Well, I mean, they got the job, right?
With my Moxie clients is I'll have them tell me basically their origin story, or I have them
Mhm.
develop an origin story, kind of like a superhero story, right? We
Yeah.
just take the important facts that are formative, I guess, for their personality or whatever. And I have them just kind of walk through that. That's why I'll start like, well, when's the first time you remember being happy? And we'll kind of, go through that. And like, or like, let's say if they're like an interior designer, and I'll ask them, why did you choose interior design? And we'll just kind of get back and further back on like their why, and helping them to talk about the things they enjoy about their profession. And I feel like, or even just about themselves. And I feel like getting them tapped into that, I think a lot of people don't stop to really think about that unless they're struggling in their branding or having a branding exercise, or maybe having to work with a photographer to do branding. They don't often stop to do that, especially if they're finding some kind of success where they haven't had to work on marketing a lot.
Mhm.
And so now they're realizing like, okay, I need to fix this marketing thing. And they're actually having to dig deep. When it's like a service-based business or a small,
Mhm.
business owner, you have to have that why. You have to understand your purpose. Otherwise, you're not going to be effective in your marketing if you're not talking
Well,
about
if
that.
you don't understand what your purpose is and the byproducts of your service to your audience, you're not sold on what you do. And if you're not sold on what you
Yeah.
do, you cannot be confident in your success. And that translates to whether or not your clients can be confident in their choice to choose you. Yeah.
And that's a great message to photographers also, because it's, to tell your own story and your own marketing that way, where, it's interesting for other people to pick up and want to be a part of.
If you're selling anything of any kind, which everyone is, whether we're selling engineering or we're selling portrait or we're selling marketing or we're selling brand, like you have to be sold on your ability to execute. You have to understand what it's costing your clients to not work with you. You
Yeah.
have to,
Mhm.
because when you don't, it's just hoping. It's not a process, it's not a system, it's not a strategy.
Here's another great growth story. So like just another marker that I guess it's like a buoy I'm passing. I know I'm
Uh-huh.
still headed towards the horizon, but when I first started my business, so I spent like 15 years doing operations in legal, like operations
Okay.
manager of law firms. Business degree, I did that for a long time. I don't know, is that the left or the right side? This is very opposite side of the brain that I'm using now. Anyway, when I first started my photography business, I couldn't say to anyone that I thought might know me outside of photography, could not say I'm a photographer. I couldn't say it
Hmm.
for like the longest time. And then certainly a nightmare of mine would have been that someone that was a peer of mine from that era wanted to work with me, because oh my God, all of my failure and my complete fraud of a photography business would be unveiled. That
Oh
would be like,
my.
that was worst case scenario, that someone would hire me that I knew from that time period. And since then I have worked with people from that era, and actually I realized that this is a great network for me to tap into. And so just recently, I was invited to go to one of the luncheons that I used, that was for an organization that I was a part of, like a very much a part of. Everyone knew me, and I knew everyone. And I walked into that room and I was fully confident and was happy to call myself a photographer, was proud to call myself a photographer. And I loved just the people were proud of me for making it. And
Yeah.
almost in some, I mean, I don't know that anyone was like envious, but I felt that they were just like, wow, you did that. And like, I wish I could do that, kind of a thing. And it was just a really nice kind of a full circle moment, because even just a year ago to walk in, I wouldn't have walked in that room. I wouldn't have done it. And if somehow someone would have dropped me off in there, I would have found a corner to hide in, or would have, probably somehow contracted like a stomach virus and would have stayed in the
Just
bathroom.
immediately, and you're just like, and I'm
Yes.
out. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, guys, but I'm sick. Yeah. So I would have found a way not to face that situation. And I was invited to go, which was really nice. And I accepted the invitation and I showed up and I was happy I did. And I look back at having done that as a positive thing. And that's just it's a huge milestone for me. It's
No,
huge
that
for
is a
me.
huge milestone. I was speaking with Bassam Sabah. He was in C-suite in aerospace engineering for private jets.
Mm,
Right. So like kind
yeah.
of the same idea, right? Completely different industry, and was a big deal. And so when he started photography, like he noticed that his identity was attached to this other career. And so he couldn't say it either.
Mm,
He was like, I really was challenged by saying I'm a portrait photographer, I'm a boudoir photographer, or just a photographer at all. Because his identity was, a C-suite level executive. And so often people are like, oh, another photographer. Right.
mm,
And that's because, creative fields in general are very challenging, because most of us and the marketplace assumes that we'll do it for peanuts and creatives have to struggle. And that's just not true.
that's not
That's
true.
that's true because we make it true, but not because it actually is. When 8% of the entire photography industry as a whole, 8%, 24,000 businesses are only making 100,000 in revenue, that tells me that the other, 92% is sitting in that creative struggle. And
Mm.
it's just not required. Sorry, I get a
Wow.
little amped up about this.
I didn't realize that statistic. Only 8% are making above six
100,000
figures.
in
Yeah.
gross
Wow.
revenue. And when I read that, like it lit a fire under me like you have not ever seen. I was
Mm,
like, that is just, and it made me like want to call all the like the big wigs, the heavy hitters,
mm.
right? I want to put Jerry Guionis and Sue Bryce and myself in a room, and we're going to change and like
Yeah.
it's just not necessary. It's not required. And so when we're in a space like you were saying, right? Like I was in legal and I was in operations in legal for years, and I couldn't say photographer, right? Because you weren't ready to meet the expectation of success or failure because you just hadn't quite made it yet. Right. And now you're in a space of like, no, I can stand in that room.
Yeah. I
Like,
think the difference too is my mindset then was I had an expectation of failure. I had a sliver of hope that I would succeed, and
ooh,
that's what I wrote on.
right.
That's how I got out of it. But overall, in general, I think I expected to fail, even though I wanted to succeed.
Sure.
I think I expected to fail and framed a lot of that around that expectation. And
Well,
that's changed, which is great.
Well, I'm very happy that that has changed, but also, it's a primal instinct, right? We are wired to be more afraid of failure and loss than we are to be excited about gain.
Yeah.
Fight or flight, survival instinct, like
Yeah.
the whole nine. And so when our expectation is we're going to fuck it up,
Yeah.
right? Now we're already taking ownership for ruining something that we started that we haven't actually ruined yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. But we're making choices based around that inevitability of that failure
Yeah.
versus what could go right. What happens
Yeah.
if we're priced sustainably and people choose to say yes?
I love that what if game. What if, the perfect client who has a great budget and wants to get beautiful photos, what if she calls me?
Or instead of what if, even if is a good one to play too. Somebody was mentioning that to me recently and I can't remember who it was right off.
Like even if worst case scenario, is that what
Right.
you mean?
Even if that customer walks through the door and only buys my bottom package, I'm still happy. Even
Yeah.
if it rains tomorrow, God, what an amazing session that could be. Instead of being in the space of, but what if it rains tomorrow? Even if it rains tomorrow, I know I can execute. Bring an umbrella.
That struck a chord in me because I think when I was leaving legal, it was because I was trying to be myself and that identity was no longer fulfilling for me.
Mm-hmm.
But it was 99% of all of my drive, all of my focus, and everything that I knew about myself was wrapped up in this legal, person. That took a lot of self work to unravel, to find my own drive, right? To drive myself, because before I was heavily driven by doing a good job. And I always did. It was very important that I did the most outstanding job
Mm-hmm.
that anyone had ever done, like that in the eyes of my boss. That's what I lived for every day. And I mean, that was great to make me a stellar employee. Very happy with my employee record from that 15 years. I was a stellar employee, but I was not me. And I wasn't chasing my own fulfillment. And so finding that self drive has been my biggest challenge to overcome like the business pains in my business.
Mm.
To because like I have drive to go do creative shoots. I will show up, whenever I need to show up for a photo shoot, but I wasn't always showing up to do the marketing, to do all the things that are important to run my business. And I think even for a while, I think I just had some PTSD on running a business from because I ran basically someone else's business for 15 years and really
Mm-hmm.
well. And I think I don't know, I'm having trouble with the left to right crossover in my brain because I did that business, Excel, spreadsheets, all kind of stuff all the time. And now, oh my God, if I have to use a spreadsheet in my business, like it ruins my day. I'm not kidding. Like I just had to do some tax stuff and I had to do some of it in a spreadsheet. And I'm like, oh, this is killing me. Not literally, but
Right,
yeah.
right. Well, it's funny, with my mentees on the studio takeover, there are a few spreadsheets involved. And most of my students are coming to me from, I would say, at least for right now, the majority of them are coming from the education they received from me and from Sue Bryce and the portrait system. And they have proof of concept, right? Now they're priced relatively sustainably. They see that it works. They're doing the thing, they're getting clients, but they know there's more. And what I've created in the studio takeover is, that business model, but there are specific tools and pieces of that programming that allow you to understand like what decisions can be made and why you would make, either direction, right? And understand the sales psychology and the spreadsheets of it. And actually those tools with my business allowed me to feel more confident as a CEO instead of only being a photographer. Yes, I'm a photographer.
Yeah.
But I'm also a CEO. And as a CEO, I need to understand my profit margins. I need to understand how to make investment choices. I need to understand where to direct my resources so that those resources make more money to double the resources. You know what I mean? And
it's so important. It's so
and so
important.
when creatives come in and they're like, "Oh, I got this spreadsheet," and I'm like, "I promise it's okay. It'll be okay. I promise, I promise, I promise you will thank me." And they're always like, "Okay." And then they start doing the work. And then I literally, every single time I get a DM on Facebook that's like, "Oh my God, this is the best tool I've ever seen in my life. I'm obsessed."
Yeah. Here's a great example of what can go wrong if you don't. This was my lesson learned. if you're not tracking these things. And not just because my system was tracking it, but there's nothing in my system to knock me over the head and be like, hey, you're not doing the important things
Checks
that
and
keep your business
balances.
afloat.
Yeah.
Yes. And so I was not looking at my financials. I wasn't looking at any of those reports that you were just talking about. None of them. And so what happened, I was just following my heart and doing what I felt I was led to do. And that is a beautiful thing. But
Sure.
the business side of my brain, or the business side of my business, got ignored. I started a nonprofit, which is also a beautiful thing, and my heart was in the right place, but I had no idea how to start one or run one. Run one, I think that's the important part that I left out, because starting it, I knew how to do that, and that was easy.
That was the
That
easy
part was
part.
easy. Yeah.
Funding
Actually
it,
running it,
however, yeah.
funding it. Yeah. So yeah. And so funny part about the funding part, because I was funding it with my business. And also I was so busy working on it and just feeling fulfilled, loving the work that I did and still loving the work that I did. But I was so busy working on it that I ignored, I didn't realize that my pipeline had just disintegrated. And all I noticed was like, ooh, good, I have time to breathe. Oh, this is good. I had fewer shoots. And then all of a sudden I had no shoots
No
and
shoots.
zero shoots. Sorry, I didn't mean to yell, but it was shocking because I'm like, how did that happen?
I
How
worked
do
so
I have
hard on my
zero
business. Where did my people
shoots?
go?
Yeah, how
Yeah.
do I have nothing? And not only no shoots, I had to completely like restart my business, because not only did I have no shoots, I had no warm leads, I had no consults, I had nothing. I had to completely, I still had my, I guess I still had my clout, I just had to pick
Sure.
up where I left
You had
off,
a
but I had,
reputation.
yes, which is
Yeah.
good. Because I definitely had to rely on that to like restart. But had I been tracking my KPIs, still gives me, but had I been tracking those KPIs, then I would have noticed well before my shoots went away, but my consults have gone down. Why have my consults gone down? I need to fix that marketing arm so that my consults stay steady, so that my,
Where is that lead
clients
generation
stay steady.
happening?
Yes. And that all that process was ignored um, until it was absolutely too late to ignore it, because it was like, oh, wow, okay, pay my mortgage now or run my business. I guess I better start running my business instead of just like bouncing around with my camera. Let's take a picture. Great. Yeah. That's all I was doing, which was fun, but and
Not
not
sustainable.
not sustainable. And
Yeah.
so I learned a very scary lesson. And I think I was really lucky in that I was able to, I'm still climbing out of that, but I was able to get out of it before it was too bad,
Too late. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and for
So that,
anybody listening, KPIs are key performance indicators. So in your photography business, right, there are sort of milestones that occur that are key performance indicators around like how well you're doing at different aspects of your sales process, right? So when you have fewer consultations, that means that maybe you have fewer leads coming in. If you have fewer leads coming in, you know that you need to turn the marketing faucet back on or increase the volume. I really love that you brought that up, because not a lot of people would be brave enough to be like, well, I screwed up my business. Well, because I've done it too. Like my way of giving money direction starting in 2019, because I spent 2017 paying off like $70,000 in debt. And like that was still a very young period in my life. Like my first 2 years is kind of like playing at business. And then I started studying with Sue Bryce in 2015. And at the beginning of 2017, I was like, no more of this. This debt is going away. Like I'm taking control of my life. And in 2019, I was really proud of that. We were doing like 20, 25 grand a month. Like I was debt free other than like my mortgage, and then a credit card that we used for the business. But I'd employed an accountant to manage my books. And I was telling myself that that accountant managing my books was keeping my books safe and not really evaluating. There were no checks and balances in place on KPIs for that accountant. Well, fast forward 3 years and I get a notice, no, it was in 2022. So yeah, 3 years. And I get a notice from the IRS for a $29,000 tax bill. And
oh
I was
my
like, wait,
God.
huh, what? Like, what does this mean? And it turned into like this all, and it's actually still like we're on a payment plan to like push through
Mm,
that stuff and all of that. But it's because I wasn't paying attention.
yeah.
I wasn't putting checks and balances in place with that accountant, and I wasn't paying attention to my money. I was just bouncing all over the globe, doing all the things and being proud of that, instead of like doing that and being accountable to myself to measure those results and actually face the data, because the data is what, as creatives, like you were saying earlier, like spreadsheet, right?
Yeah.
Like that data is so vital, and you can make such powerful decisions just from looking at that data, that allows you to bypass the emotional side of what you think might be happening and actually make a sound decision. And that's not to say not to listen to your gut, right? Like your gut knows. My gut knew
Oh,
that
yeah.
passing off responsibility to an accountant was not really the way I should be doing things, but I
Yeah.
didn't want to face the next level of money garbage that I was not facing.
Yeah.
And so I passed that responsibility on to them. But now it's like, how can I look more closely at this thing? How can I measure these results so that I know that the decisions that I'm making are putting me in the direction that I want to be going? And you can't do that when your blinders are up and it's just
Yeah.
about taking photos.
Yeah. It's so easy to avoid. And that I tend to avoid the things that I don't enjoy doing. So I
Sure.
avoid spreadsheets and I avoided looking at the data for a long time because it just didn't feel good. It didn't feel good. And I was really trying to feel better. So why would I look at something that doesn't feel good? I'm just going to
Uh-huh.
focus on what feels good, which was interacting with my clients and really chasing my passion. And what I can say though is it doesn't feel good. And it still doesn't feel good to look at that stuff, but it doesn't hurt that bad. And you know what feels really good? When you look at the stuff and you make the hard decisions, and then later you know that you've done the things and that your business is healthy. And maybe think about it as like a wellness check instead of like, oh, let me look at KPIs. Let's check like our business. Sorry, it's just like a natural response. Like, oh, okay, business measurement. Like, oh, I hate it. I don't hate it, but I don't enjoy it. I don't enjoy it. I would much rather do lots of things than,
Yes, but
manage my business.
imagine though, imagine when you do that wellness check and the KPIs are showing you that you're going to make twice as much money this year.
Yes.
Then what does it feel like?
Yeah. It
Right?
feels great.
Right?
It feels
Because
great.
we go, I don't want to look at it because I know I'm not doing what I'm supposed to.
Yes.
Right?
Like
And then, yeah.
I just did some tax stuff on a spreadsheet and I did not want to do it. And it took me like, I don't know, 6 hours, but I was like, I'm doing it. I had told key people in my life, I was like, this is what I'm doing today. And if you see me chatting on Facebook or if you see me doing whatever, I
Right,
need you
right.
to reach out and be like, stop it and look at
Hold
the
me
spreadsheet.
accountable.
Yes, two
Yeah.
people that was like, this is happening, and I need you to make sure, like, could you just check on me and make sure I'm not in
Uh-huh.
the fridge or something, that I'm focused and doing the spreadsheet. And I got through it with help. I don't know that I could have done it without those people being like, do the thing, right?
Yeah.
And I did it, and like it's just so satisfying because I'm actually, we're getting a refund, which is
Oh,
great.
yeah.
I expected to have a tax bill. I really did.
Yeah.
And so that was just really rewarding. It was really rewarding to know that I did all the things that I thought I was going to get in trouble for. I wrote it all down on this big nasty spreadsheet, these big numbers, money I spent that
Uh-huh.
I shouldn't have. I'm a recovered, big spender. I get money and I'm like, how can I spend this? Just subconsciously, I'm like, we can put it there, we can
Ooh,
put it
what
there,
can
we
we
can put
do
it there.
now? Yeah.
Yes. And I will get real creative on how to spend that money. I don't have a problem figuring out how to spend money. But yeah, like it was just so satisfying to know that I faced my fear, I put it in the spreadsheets, I sent it to my accountant, and then I was done. And knowing that I'm done, instead of holding that and carrying it with me, because every day that I didn't do it, I was like, oh, I need to
Oh,
do this
yeah.
thing all day. I'd be like, oh, I don't want to do the thing. And so I'm going to do anything to not think about the thing. But so all day, every day, I'm doing anything to not think about the thing, which means I'm thinking about the thing all day,
All day.
all day. And I'm
So it's
telling you, it is so
ruining
freeing.
any conversations. It's
Yes.
overwhelming your time. You're not ever fully present with anybody else in the room, like, because you're constantly worried. Like, guys,
Yes.
data is so good. So good. And as a recovering avoidant adventurer myself, like, I can speak to how empowering it is to know that the choices that you're making are from a space of knowledge and trust that are founded
Mhm.
in what it is that you want. Like, we do a lot of talking, on this podcast and in different portrait spaces about creating the life you want and living life by design. That information is vital to be able to do that. And so, like, look at the spreadsheet, pay attention. Where did your money go? Where is your money going? What are you saving up for? What do you want to take advantage of? It used to be for me, I'd be like, well, I'm going to this thing because, I was making, like $250,000 in revenue. So I could afford to do whatever my short-sightedness wanted to do. But had I paid attention to the data, maybe I shouldn't have done that. Right.
Mhm.
Maybe I shouldn't have gone on that trip, and I should have put this money in a different place, because then it could have turned $1 into 15.
Oh my God. And so Kat, you just made me think about something that I definitely wanted to talk about. And that is budgeting. And that's also, oh, I hate that word. I hate that word. I do not, and coming from an accounting background, I have a degree in business degree in accounting. I know how to budget. I know what a budget is. And I know that, of course, we should all have one. But I didn't know how to make a budget for myself. And here's the when I realized that I wasn't actually budgeting, spend it on the things I don't think about, the things that I should be spending on it in a year or in 10 years even. And I just go and spend. And I think one thing that I've learned in my business failures, or what is the thing that you say, the failing to success or
Failing forward. Yeah.
failing forward, is that, I think budgets are gross, but they're very important. And I can't be successful. I can't go to WPPI unless I budget for it, because
Mhm.
I'm a shiny object person. So if WPPI happened to come around and I had a big client come through, I'd be like, oh, perfect, I'm going to WPPI. But it's like, I'm not.
Yeah. So
It's
if it's
really,
not, in your financial projections and it's not on your calendar, it's not a priority for you.
yeah, yeah.
Right. And, we say budget, like the scary B word next to boundaries, right? Like, we all do this thing. One of the tools that I have for my mentees is this really brilliant projection spreadsheet. And the first column, it maps out like your cost of goods and your units of measurement and your overhead, and like allows you to sort of take stock of where your money has gone and what percentage is going to where, and savings and all that. But it's tough because that first column is all about where your money has gone. Well, let's see. In 2023, like, my overhead per month was this for all of these things, and you itemize it all out. And then there's the pieces that you're selling, units of measurement at the top, and then it has their cost of goods associated. So you get the understanding of like the sales of those units of measurement, and it tallies like the cash amount, the revenue amount, and then against your overhead. So you actually understand like the cash flow. And anytime, and this is true for myself and anybody that's used it, they look at it and they're like, well, I'll do this again next month when I look and see what I spent. And I'm like, no, 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 no. That first column is the only time you're ever looking back at what you spent, so you can get a baseline. But moving forward, this is a projection tool. So that if you want to go to WPPI, right? Or, you want to go on vacation, and let's say that's in March or that's in August, or insert whatever here, you can project what you need to sell and really present and campaign for before and after, so that your work doesn't fall off. So you don't come back from the thing and you're broke and you're starting from scratch. And they're like, huh? I'm like, yeah. So if you have WPPI and, tickets are relatively inexpensive, but you're paying for airfare, accommodations, eating in Vegas every day, like, it's not an inexpensive adventure. And this is true for imaging or sync or BopCon or any of the rest of it. So it's like, okay, well, I know that in this line item piece, I can put $300 a month out for a year and have like plenty of room to move for all the travel and accommodations. Oh, but it's a trade show, so I might want to buy some gear. So if I want to buy some gear, then I need to amp that savings up, right? But you get to decide what that is. But it shows you how it is that you can move through that space so that the budgeting, the bad, scary B word, isn't, oh my God, I can't do, I can't have, I can't be. It's this is how I achieve and still go on vacations and still go on these, fun trade show adventures and connect with other people in the community, because entrepreneurship is isolating and it's hard and it can really fucking suck sometimes. And these tools, these things that we're avoiding in our businesses are exactly the things that will help us actually achieve what we want to be who we want to be, and run our businesses successfully and not be in pain anymore. And yet we avoid it like the plague
Because
because
it
we're
feels
so
like,
scared.
and it just feels like that's where the bad news is coming from. And so I don't want to look at it,
Right.
but the good news is coming from there too. So yeah,
Well, it
it's
shows you what you're
important to
doing
look.
right. Like I could look at that first column of overhead and be like, oh, well, I knew I spent too much money on dresses. Right. Or I could
Yeah.
also look at it and be like, I saved like $800 this month. Right. Like that's in my savings account. And that's 1 month. What if I double it next month? Right. Like that's really where that stuff gets exciting. So, yeah, for anybody who's needing those spreadsheets, like I'm your girl. Those tools will change your life and change your business. Bex, where can people find you online?
Oh, well, bexwood.com. On Instagram, I'm at Bexwood Photo. On Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, Bexwood Photo. BXWOD Photo. Don't know if you needed
Awesome.
the spelling.
Hey, some people might, but guys, you can also find those links down below in the description. Bex, thank you so much for having this conversation with me. We really ran the gamut from like, let's go from campaigns to KPIs to business tools to identity and self-value and everything and more. This was a fun conversation. Thank you for spending time with me today.
It was so fun. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Guys, thank you so much. Have a wonderful week, and we will see you next week on the Studio Takeover.